Okay, so I was taking medication for a long time. It felt like a really long time for schizophrenia diagnosis, and uh, and so I don't know. The thing is, um, that for my experience, I experienced something that was a little bit easier for me to kind of fight, in the sense of the diagnosis being wrong. It's not so much a matter of fighting, but it's more so just knowing it. And I think that's where it was really hard, though, because basically I know it for myself, but no one else knows it, and the doctors, they don't understand. My parents, they're adopting what the doctors believe, and my whole family is doing that. The hospitalization itself was very, I don't know how to quantify it. It was but it was one of those things that really added a significant factor. The experience in the hospital, the overall experience, added those factors into the overall perception of me for my diagnosis, what I was going through, the hardships that I was faced with. Um, and so yeah, it was really hard. And so the whole time there's a sense that I know different than what everyone else is saying. And in addition to that, the doctors also reinforced the fact that a lot of people with schizophrenia say the same exact thing. And so like there's, when I'm trying to explain to the doctors that what I'm experiencing is different, and I'm trying to use, like for example, I would say I was more aware, and so the doctors would actually say that's a common thing that people would say. They commonly say that they have a greater degree of awareness, but they actually they don't realize that they're not aware of a lot of very difficult things, aspects of the overall experience. And so so yeah, it's a illness, it's a disorder. So I don't know. It's not so much I'm trying to like make a point about medication where like on every on a daily basis, it's something that's a struggle to take medication. And even, like I don't know, when I was at my best and kind of working with the doctor, even then, like my mind would go blank in terms of being able to think in reflection of my actual experience and be able to and I always also too always felt a sense of I don't want to take that much medication, so I'd rather take less than more. And so that would be my communication form with the doctor. And all the while, I never really want to take the full, I probably never give myself the capacity to experience the full effectiveness of the medication. But it takes a long time for medication to start being effective. I guess it takes years to get used to it. I think one big point, one doctor said something, their perspective was very different from another doctor that I went to, and it had to do about the risk of weight gain. And so one of my doctors, I asked her, isn't this medication associated with an increased risk of weight gain and diabetes? And she was like, yeah, this medication is that's part of this risk factors. And then my other doctor I went to, he said no. He was like, that's not a problem with this medication. And so I think it really boils down to subjectivity, what you're looking at. So maybe my other doctor was looking at a longer term perspective, and maybe but I don't know. I think it really depends on maybe even the group of people that you're analyzing, and uh, and so I don't know. This conversation is about doctors and medication and schizophrenia, and really, I don't want it to be any about what I was talking about. What I really wanted to say was something about memory and how part of the experience, as I had experienced it, as I was experiencing it, those experiences that I had, a lot of those experiences were lost, and part of it, I believe, has to do with the way that the medication changes your emotional state. And so like I try to rationalize it in like in terms of a story of trying to like kind of see how it affects your memory. And basically my interpretation of it is so we have these experiences in life, maybe those experiences that are memorable, those things that really add something of substance to your life. And those experiences most definitely are very emotional. There's an emotional component to those experiences. And but what happens if coinciding with one of those experiences, just I guess it just turns out to be that way where you need to start taking medication that affects how you feel, that changes basically your emotional disposition. It affects your neurochemistry, your feel good, or the chemicals that regulate your emotions or your state of emotion. So like maybe the medication might help regulate with your stress response, and so you don't have you don't respond to things that stress you out in your old way that you used to. And maybe there was actually a good reason behind why those things were stressful to you, and maybe that reason has something on another level of being able to come to greater realization of the reasons why. Maybe it might take talk therapy or going to go see a counselor to kind of maybe discover the underlying reasons why you have, stress with those things. But so now when you take this medication that eliminates that or that reduces it, the thing is, for me, it was always painful. Like even when I would take maximum dose of anxiety relief medication, it didn't work. And I'm saying anxiety relief because from other perspectives, not just from psychology, but from other medical professions, some of the same or similar symptoms are interpreted in a very different way. So, for example, anxiety is, I would experience it as a very heavy pain in my chest where it's burning, it hurts, and it's an ongoing thing that lasts and lasts. And thinking about it hurts. And my whole chest would be like on fire. And so in the research that I've done, and I've learned that there are some things with schizophrenia that are commonplace. For example, cardiovascular disease is actually there was a study, a Berkeley study, an analysis of people that have schizophrenia, and they came to conclude that people with schizophrenia have a very high, much higher risk than normal of getting cardiovascular disease or cancers, anything relating to cardiovascular disease and cancer. And but the thing is that for schizophrenia patients, it goes on undiagnosed until it's already terminal, until you're already kind of at the edge of life. Or you die. It's already too late. It's not discovered. And so I think part of it, that reasoning for those difficulties in being able to uh, come to determine the symptoms or the causes, the root cause for the symptoms, is because maybe that there's a lot of mixing up with symptoms and a lot of variability in terms of how you perceive symptoms. So, for example, maybe someone that has Tourette syndrome, they might have hallucinations just in exactly the same way as someone that has schizophrenia, uh, and uh, and so um, uh, I don't know. Actually, that's a really difficult topic to look at because one of my first medications that I took for schizophrenia was also ended up. I guess it was discovered that it had application for Tourette syndrome, but it was specific for, I think, if you were under 13 years old, it helped. And so yeah, that's actually a new potential use for that old medication that I used to take. I took Abilify, and so that was one of the newer medications that came out, the more modern medications. And actually coinciding with taking that medication, actually started to experience, it's like OCD, but when OCD is on the inside, it's like it has to do with your thoughts. It's not really the same as OCD anymore. It's a little bit different, but it's still there. And so for schizophrenia, when I was taking the Abilify medication, I was experiencing on the inside, uh, 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 when I used to talk to myself, put words to especially if it was something difficult and putting words to it talking about it to myself would help me feel better. Like it would help me come to a greater realization and help me think about things that I had not thought about, seeing it in a completely different way, not even any awareness of it, shining a light of awareness. That really helped actually a lot. And but I remember coinciding with that, doing that for myself, I also came to put a voice to the experience that I was going through, as perceived, the doctors as they had perceived from their perspective. And so putting that to words, putting that story to words, it was incredibly painful, especially coinciding with starting to feel relief from starting to, think about it and being able to put a voice to where I'd never had a voice before, have awareness where I didn't even realize like I can't even think about that. And so thinking about it for the first time and just like it's a relief. It feels good. And so to think in opposition towards that awareness, something that it was in general, it was hard for me in general, but in that context of starting to feel relief, going back to that thought or putting words, more so putting words to the thought that was part of the reasons why I was having so much hard times, putting words to it, basically the perspective of the doctors. That was I remember it was incredibly painful. And and so I remember I tried to even I was like starting to say it and I'm saying it and then I'm starting to feel really strong pain and then the next thought comes up and I'm kind of already in that mode of putting my thoughts to words, or putting words or trying to expand on my thoughts on the things that are passing, uh, points of awareness that cross my mind, expanding on those things. I started to find that it was incredibly painful to think about putting words to those thoughts. And, or I don't know about starting to think, I started to experience that it was incredibly painful, especially with the things that were painful. Uh, um, the aspect of the experience that in general was hard for me. So I don't know. It's really, in general, it's hard to think. I find that when I do a diet change, and I'm doing it for a longer period of time, uh, I find that it just I start to feel like it's easier to just to kind of like think about stuff without just like almost realize, without really having to think about stuff. For example, like direction. That was one thing which was way different. Like my sense of direction, I could be going all around the city and I'm not even paying attention to it. I just like know my sense of direction. It's that way. I go that way. I just know where I am. And but after going back or after eating a kind of a regular diet for a period of time as kind of an experiment to help improve my the challenges or the hardships that I'm faced with in terms of hunger, just kind of like I'm eating this different diet, but it's hard sometimes, and there's a lot of stress that I encounter in the kitchen, and I always have to be in the kitchen. It's really hard to only be in the kitchen, and it just makes it way worse. So, eating a more open diet where I'm starting to be a little bit more open to restaurant foods and just kind of like, add a mentality of that's opposite of scarcity into my overall like dietary kind of mentality, being it making trying to make it easier for me. I started eating normal foods again, or not so much normal, but relatively adjusted to the best of my ability. But still, they just had a little bit of those ingredients that like salted oils. And what I found worked the best for me was no oil, no salt added, pretty much only whole foods, even pasta or like maybe bread. That wouldn't help me feel better. The things that made me feel best was like just food in its most natural, most potent, pharmacological benefit that it could give me form of eating food. And so basically, freshness is a huge factor. It has to be like fresh, straight out of the fridge or, just, as fresh as possible. Because the idea is that those nutraceutical components start to degrade even just after pre-cutting and stuff like that. So with restaurants, they might do some prep, I don't know, they might have a bar or a container full of pre-cut onions or something like that. And so just eating that way in general, it wasn't that great. And so I found the point is that after a while of eating like that, I found that it grew like it was like kind of incremental, just like a little bit more cloudy, kind of like just like mostly not so much more. I don't know how to put it to words. And so uh but to say what I was going to say in the way that I was going to say it was it started getting harder to be kind of more aware and be more kind of spatial awareness. That was one thing, like location where I was, and also thought awareness, just like in general, like being able to kind of have a greater degree of mindfulness of my emotional state in context of like the bigger picture. That just kind of gradually kind of got reduced and reduced until I'm just like living kind of like they say with a chicken without its head. You're just kind of like mindlessly going experiencing stuff without kind of having any general sense of understanding of it. It's just stuff comes up and just like you don't really know what to do with it. It's overwhelming. I don't know. I'm just like making up stuff, I guess, and so that's it.